Hi, Tailoring Talkers. Before we kick this episode off, you're not going to get the usual intro because this is one of those episodes where my guest and I had a long pre-talk. The pre-talk is where we both get on the call together, and because we've never met, we kind of just shoot the breeze and get comfortable with each other before we record the actual episode. Vinny and I, we got on so well from the off, and I held off editing this episode and releasing it for a little while because I was debating, whether to include most of that pre-talk. But sometimes, and I know from listener feedback, it's just nice to hear or eavesdrop on two people meeting for the first time and getting to know each other and the conversation evolving and developing and two people becoming friends. So I've included most of it. I hope that's okay. This guy is amazing. He's an amazing individual. He's got such a big heart. He's super talented. And, my God, the work that he's done, shows, celebrities he's worked with. He's had such an influence on major parts of our pop culture as it is today. He was one of the leading lights in reality TV. He's just a wonderful, wonderful person. So anyway, I'm going to shut up now because I've just given you a really long sort of intro, but I just wanted to warn you, this is probably going to be about 10 to 14 minutes of pre-talk before I actually get to the normal tailoring talk introduction, and then we roll on with the episode. So I really hope you enjoy my chat with Vinnie Potestivo. It's been tough because we just had snow over here, and it's like -5 at the moment, which I know for your deep winter is nothing, because the last time I was in New York, it was like minus. It was when you guys have the warnings, like don't go outside unless you absolutely have to, cover your mouth, don't breathe the air in, all of that kind of stuff. And my darling wife decided that we needed to go to the Empire State Building, to the very top. And I remember asking one of the guards on the elevators, like, it's -10 out there. Like, what is it when you get up there? And they were like, well, it's -10 on the ground, and it's like -19 when you get up to whatever that floor is. And I remember going out onto the deck, and we lasted about 5 seconds, no more. It was so cold. And then we went straight back inside, and there was this pigeon, this big fat pigeon, just sitting outside, just looking at us through the window. Like,
Let me in. Let me in.
No, it actually looked pretty happy.
Oh, yeah.
Just like
stay out.
Yeah, exactly. You guys are wimps. You humans, really? We're not built to survive anything, human beings. It's just that, we've been given the gift of being able to create stuff. But
New York gets, because of the river and how the land on both sides of the, like from the Hudson, it kind of pushes everything
Hudson
into a funnel.
Yeah.
So you have the Hudson on the west side of Manhattan, and you have the East River on the east side. So both waterfronts makes New York. I lived in Dumbo on like the East River side, on the east side of Manhattan, and it was legit like -9 degrees from anything else. So if it was freezing when I got dressed for work, I'd go to work and it was like nice, and I was like, oh, I thought it was like so cold, and it's not.
Yeah.
It's its own little climate there. But that's when it's the prettiest, by the way. When it's that cold, you can see like Staten Island from the Empire State Building. It's pretty cool. I actually can see my dorm building where, like, I started my company and I went to school. Because it was so tall in Staten Island, and it's on the North Shore. So I always kind of have like a peripheral of that building. Yeah. That's how when you're like going, well, with the Twin Towers, and you have your buildings that tell you sort of, where things are. That's still the way to do it.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's just for me, it's such a magical city. And, it's just the things that you see that you recognize. I remember I think it's somewhere around the Central Park area. and then kind of looking up at this building and recognizing it as the building from Ghostbusters.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's the building that Stay Puft like climbed up and, goes all.
That's hysterical. I know exactly where Rick Moranis runs out of the building. I know exactly which building you're talking about. That's funny.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
and it doesn't change, those buildings. They stay. Even the firehouse for Ghostbusters is cool. I have my moments on every street corner where I'm like Seinfeld or Friends or Sopranos, Sex and the City. Like I have these, like, I think in New York of media moments for sure. I get territorial about media in New York. I loved being at MTV when, the youth culture of the world was watching it, but I loved being in like the third largest industry in New York, because there's finance and fashion before us. And it didn't seem like such a big deal. It seemed kind of cable programming felt more adjacent to like theater because of the proximity of like Broadway in New York. For me, it felt it felt closer to working in theater than it did working on like a major set for a big TV, NBC, ABC, like the big networks. And I had this like New York mentality of wanting to stay here. I realized I could tour the country and as a casting director and meet thousands of people, or I could just stand still in Times Square and still meet the entire country because they pass through, New York at some point. And I realized that, and I'm very fortunate to have had a career in TV when there wasn't really much of a career to be had here in New York. And I stayed here. There were opportunities to go out west, and it would have turned me into maybe a showrunner or a production company owner, and I'd be selling episodes and series and franchises. But instead, I like the people part. New York, you get good with the people part in New York, and I like that part. And I am very aware that New York is a transient city. So if I can stay here and the people I'm working with can run around the world making impact and then swing through New York on their impact tours, like that would a brilliant way for me to get to work with people. And that's like something that I don't know where I came up with that weird mindset. That's like some made up mindset stuff, by the way. I want to point that out, but that was like the boundaries that I said, hey, this works and let's try it. And it hasn't changed.
Well, if you're in a pond and it's sustaining you and you're happy in that pond, why go fish anywhere else, right? Or swim anywhere else. And I kind of get that from an outside mentality. This is probably all gonna make it in, so I'm gonna do the intro and then we're just gonna carry on, because I could talk about New York all day long. I mean, that's not all we're gonna talk about, but I've got some stories which make me understand your sentiment there totally. And I'm not even from New York, right? I've just had the good fortune to visit your amazing city so many times. So there we go. Are you ready, Vinny?
I'm ready.
Let's do it. Welcome to the Tailoring Talk Show with me, your host, Roberto Revilla. I'm a bespoke tailor, menswear designer, and owner of Roberto Revilla London Suit and Shirt Makers. This is the podcast where you drop in for the threads, but often leave with something quite unexpected. I talk to self-starters and creators about their journeys, the highs and lows, and the lessons they've learned along the way. If you haven't already, please support the show by subscribing. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please help me out by leaving a rating and a review. Today's guest was a talent development exec at MTV from 98 to 07, involved with shows like the Osbournes, Newlyweds, Laguna Beach, The Hills, and many more. He then went back to his agency to continue building the biggest talent and social brands, implementing procedures for talent development departments across dozens of networks and production companies. He is also the host of the podcast I Have a Podcast, where he sits down with talent he's worked closely with. He inspires a host of modern creators to be more impactful by advising media strategies that allow them to ignite the conversation and community that they want to connect with. Tailoring Talkers, please join me in welcoming Vinnie Potestivo to the Tailoring Talk Show. Vinnie, how are you?
Heyo, Roberto. I'm great, man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Hey, Brooklyn.
Yeah, Brooklyn in the house.
It's so exciting to have it. I've had a couple of New Yorkers on, but
Right.
I was really excited to talk to you. So we were in the pre-show talk thing that I don't know. I can't remember what us podcasters are meant to call it. But we
drinks
were talking
without
about
drinks.
exactly. But I get your sentiment for New York though, because I feel like if I'd been born and raised there, that I would pretty much be the same. I mean, it is really such a magical city. I mean, the first time I went there was about 24 years ago, and it was a very hot summer. It was probably late June, early July. So we talked about your winters. Your summers are like the complete opposite extreme because they're like 90 to over 100-degree stinking heat. Like you step outside and like you're pouring in sweat.
Yeah. Stinky. New York gets a little ripe.
And there were so many magical moments because I remember seeing like a kind of black one of those Lincoln style town cars parked outside the public library, and there was a film crew, and I'm sure you see film crews like all the time over there, but you got to think this was what was 97, I want to say 98 or something like that. And so my first time in New York, it was actually my first time abroad, to be fair, and so I saw this black kind of town car, and there's a film crew and so on. And I turn around to my friends and I'm like, they're filming Men in Black 2. That has to be Men in Black 2. And it was. And then at one point we went to Grand Central Station for the first time. And I wander into this place and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, I mean, so many great movies, right? With so many scenes there. But, I'm thinking of Al Pacino and I'm looking up at the ceilings and so on. And I'm like, this was that scene in whatever film it was. And this guy, he was like a bouncer or something. He says, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, nothing. I'm just a tourist." And he said, what are you doing right now?" And I said to him, "Nothing." He said, "Great. Join the line there and talk to your friends and just make it look like you're having a conversation. So people are going to run through in a few minutes, and I want you to look shocked and surprised and scared at the same time." I was like, what? And I look over and I see Joel Schumacher sitting in a high chair, right? A director's chair. And we look around and we're like, oh, we just wandered into a film set. So we did what we were told. We're queuing up the elevators at Grand Central, and all of a sudden, Chris Rock and Anthony Hopkins come running through, chasing after some other guy. And it was a film called Bad Company, which I have never seen, but I should be in it somewhere. And we were like, oh wow, that's Anthony Hopkins and Chris Rock. I was like, this is just absolutely insane.
I love that.
But that's the magic in New York. And I remember the first time when for a tailoring company I worked for previously, they wanted to open in New York. So I went over there to kind of, get it all set up. And the way that people, Manhattanites, I guess you would call them, just embrace entrepreneurs is incredible. Like, we don't have that over here. Over there, it's like, yep, come in, and they're showing you around the place. And they're talking to you about, their achievements and all this kind of stuff. And then you're like, would you like to try me out on a suit and see it? And they're like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this proper. I'm not going to try and do the accent. We're going to do this properly. So let's do 4 suits and 5 sport coats. And we need pants to go with the sport coats. And then we need to match shirts with everything. And I just never had that before. And I was just like, oh my God, I just want to... I'd move to New York in a heartbeat.
Well, you need to have clarity if you plan on getting anywhere. Otherwise, the resistance, the energy, that the New York, the city that never sleeps. There's energy that's out there. It's other people's dreams and goals that are happening, and it's not to say that you have to work against them, but sometimes it's finding like-minded paths. Sometimes, like, that's why as New Yorkers we have these moments where we're in each other's lives for a year, and and then we don't see each other for 5 or 10 or 15 years, and then we land on the same set 15 years later, and it all seems to make sense. We've all gone through some unique journey. I too, though, have been very passionate about media in New York. You've had some really cool experiences accidentally. I had not to say I had an accidental moment which led to my job at MTV in Times Square. Was meeting up with a casting director who was looking for audience members, and ultimately I was able to leverage, a moment in Times Square in front of a live studio audience to turn into a 10-year career at MTV. But I've been in a couple of films that were shot here in New York, and it's kind of neat when you figure out the system. There's a great company called Grant Wilfley, and he is like the king of extras casting, background casting, featured actor casting in New York, especially if you're non-union. And I've gotten a chance to be in the background of the new Sex and the City, and I was in The Irishman in like one scene.
Oh, cool.
And it's fun. It's fun to, as a New York. And by the way, I appreciate the term Manhattanite. I'm sure that word is used somewhere. I think we would say New Yorker, like with a real thick accent too, like a real thick New Yorker accent. I think that's the coolest part about those giant films, and that's kind of like it felt approachable in New York. Film and TV didn't feel approachable to me in Los Angeles, even when I was in it. To be very clear, even 2 or 3 years into being at MTV and having a staff position in casting, I still didn't feel that I could make the impact in Los Angeles that I could in New York. And there's a lot more networks out west, there's a lot more talent out west. There's a lot more opportunities for media out west, but I found myself in a unique position here in the East Coast. I found myself being, lucky to be an early adopter and an early name in the reality TV world. And I didn't realize I was doing this then, and it's just part of my strategy even now moving forward, and how to stand out and how to get discovered is you got to stand still. And like, I felt like I need to be Vinnie from New York. I felt like Vinnie from New York is going to stand out more in this media industry than Vinnie, the casting director, or Vinnie, the MTV guy, because I actually got de-Vinnied and then out-Vinnied as soon as I left because of Jersey Shore. So like right. Anyone who knew Vinnie from MTV when I was there is a very different Vinnie from MTV that most people on this planet now know. And I love that, by the way. Hey, I say that defensively. But he's from Staten Island, and there's a part of me, I'm from Staten Island, and there's this sort of New York pride where it just felt like cable wasn't supposed to work. I felt like reality TV wasn't supposed to be as accepted, and it was not an easy journey. I work in podcasting now. I worked and still do work in cable, and predominantly cable television, unpreferred media, to be honest. Most people wish I was casting commercials or films, or like, oh, if Vinnie's calling, it means I got to go do something. But if you do it and you do it right, I can get the whole world to see it. And I learned how to capture those great moments while at MTV. I didn't learn how to distribute them at MTV. MTV, the network, gave 30-minute windows for us to figure out how to tell the story of Newlyweds, or how to tell a couple of prank turned punked storylines, or what's happening in the house of the Osbournes that can make sense for the world to understand how functional a dysfunctional family can really be. Because I don't know about you, but like, I was the Osbournes in my block. My boss, by the way, Rod Asa, the man who sat down with Sharon Osbourne and they came up with the concept. I know he and I would both say it was we were the Osbournes of our neighborhoods. We were the dysfunctional loud family that somehow worked, and they have so much heart and so much love, and they're so supportive of each other, but also quickly misunderstood and quickly overjudged, and unlike the status quo, that most people strive to be. But I think that's where greatness lives, is in that area where you have full control over your moves. Not to say that you have control over how they're perceived, but that's what I liked about reality TV was even the parts that are quote unquote controlled, or the pieces that feel a little contrived and done for TV, the reality is those actions still happened. What reality TV gave people the opportunity to do is just kind of like make more fun options, or throw in different unique ways to compel a story, but still the actions that were taken were real. The outcomes, trust me, the outcomes are very real. I think there was like maybe one season in the early 2000s of maybe Kelly and Jack moments where they were like, oh, yeah, you did it for TV, but past that, no more. And I even remember the housewives having this conversations with each other. And when I got to cast Housewives of New Jersey, and they're like, no more in season 2, no more of this, like, we got to get on the same page. And unfortunately, back then, discourse really helped cut through the clutter. So networks and producers saw that and ramped that up. And now there's a lot of responsibility in creating content. These networks don't let producers put talent in situations like that. They have more opportunities for talent to step up and step out of what they're being told to do, so they have space to be who they are. The networks created more space for them to, Bethany might not like being on Housewives of New York because of XYZ, but she likes being on Bravo, so we can keep her on Peacock and try a different format. And so they're finding unique ways to work with talent. I can identify with that. That's what I did at MTV. And it's what I do now with business owners who own their podcasts, who own their content, who, by the way, maybe you don't even own your podcast. Maybe you're a podcast guest like I am right now, and you just get to own your story on someone else's podcast who, thank you very much, Roberto, spends his money and time creating and crafting this media so that I can get my message out there. And they're like, no, this is cool. This, by the way, what we're doing now, this is like what reality TV casting used to be like, except I cut my voice and me out, and then I just send the network you with some photos and some music in the beginning. You know what I mean? This is Roberto, and I just hit send. This is really cool what we have the ability to do now. And I'm not talking about the networking part, talking about like the really interpersonal discovery piece, the part that changes the alchemy of the next question and the output of what comes after that. So all of that to say, I love being creative, and that people understand this creator economy, that people finally can put value and can invest in creators, whether you're advertising or marketing or pure creative, like many of us are.
Yeah. I mean, it's really funny. God, there's so much going through my head now. So I need
spaghetti on the wall. Let's see what sticks.
Exactly. I need to make a decision right now as to where I want to kind of take you. Well, you know what? Actually, let's go with my first thought as you were talking there, because what I realized is that, I mean, you're at MTV late 90s. You're really one of the pioneers of reality TV and these shows. And I remember my first experience of reality TV was, things like Big Brother over here, which we kind of found really odd, because why would we want to just turn our televisions on and just watch hours of just people actually most of the time not really doing anything, right? But then, there's this thing where people just love looking out the window at other people rather than at what's going on in their own lives, right? We don't like holding a mirror up to ourselves. And I think that's where initially maybe some of this success of reality TV first kind of kicked in, because it sort of it took advantage of that very sort of human trait. But also thinking about it, it was kind of the precursor to social media, because reality TV, right? Before reality TV, who were our celebrities? It was the actors that you came to know through successful TV shows and movies and so on. Then reality TV comes along and starts to create stars out of people who the world did not know about before. And unless it was a show like the Osbournes, we all knew who Ozzy Osbourne was. We might not have known his family, but because we knew who he was, and there was this kind of morbid fascination with him because he's, comes across as legit crazy through a lot of the stuff he got up to in his Black Sabbath days and so on. But these other shows that kind of kicked out, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but Jersey Shore and other stuff, You know, the people that were cast on those shows were completely unknown. They were not actors or actresses or musicians, whatever. They were just people. But then they became celebrities. Then social media really kicks up a few gears. And you get the advent of Twitter and then Instagram and so on. And nowadays we have TikTok, which again is creating celebrities out of nobodies. And the whole market's changed. But I wonder what it's like for you, having been at the very beginning, the dawn of all of this, to now, kind of what you've seen over the last 2 decades, and you know, whether you think it's kind of developed for the better, or whether, you know, it's turning into a kind of scary monster.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the advent of podcasting is proof that we appreciate stories. We like being shared. We like being heard. We appreciate being seen. It's an important part of how we communicate globally and within our communities and external from our communities. So I think for sure it's been for the better. And I can go through that timeline a little bit too. You know, MTV was born in 81. In 81, music videos were born, and MTV says, we're going to give, they look around the room and say, artists a couple of $1,000s. They already got great music. They seem to know what the community, the kids, the culture is all talking about. So who better than to empower them with a 3 to 4 minute video presentation of what they stand for, and we'll put it on air and we'll get behind them. And at first it was rock, and it was a very sort of 1970, imagine all the imagine the swank of advertising in the 60s and 70s. Imagine this one motley group of rock guys that just dig rock music, and they're our time's going to come and we're going to make our platform. And then finally the 80s hits, MTV comes, they say, we're going to create music videos. Now artists have 3 to 4 minutes of video time, of storytelling time. It changed my life. I saw sexuality in a way that I had never even understood. No one was even writing about, that I could see now on screen. I saw gender roles being defined. I saw unique relationships. I understood love triangles, and you know, the highs and the lows of like what we were talking about were coming from the perspective of the artist. And then in the late 80s, Mary Alice Bunham and Jonathan Murray get together. These two people, one with a news background and one with a soap opera background, and their agent says, work on a project together. And they say, well, what if we did something where it was like real people, but then we dramatize it? And they came up with The Real World, and they pitched that to MTV. And for 10, maybe 15 years, Real People stayed on MTV, and MTV dominated this like reality Real People market that didn't go anywhere outside of that network. Except for maybe CW and a couple of the other networks that I can think of in the early 2000s, there wasn't this boom until two things happened. One, the format touched a celebrity like the Osbournes, and then Jessica Simpson, and then Ashton Kutcher. And it was that trifecta that got Osbournes season 2 the record-breaking numbers that it got, and gave us the platform to get Newlyweds to the second season and introduce Punk'd to the world. It was that trifecta of rock. I look back at the DNA of how the explosion happened at MTV. It had to be Ozzy Osbourne. Who else would the powers that be at MTV? Who else would possibly buy into that idea, right? And then what I thought was cool was that I was at MTV in 98 when they shifted. And I actually will say this two ways. I'll say it the easiest way first, which is they shifted from 3 to 4 minutes to 30 minutes. And then they gave artists 30 minutes for storytelling instead of 3 minutes. And Osbournes and Newlyweds, Jessica Simpson and Ashley Simpson. I can go down the list, Dave Navarro, and I can go down the list of people who took advantage of how to tell a story in 30 seconds. My job was to find talent at the network. And I remember one of the new hosts, we call them video jockeys, VJs back in the day, was starting his session, his recording. And I went down to the studio to make sure everything was cool and they were set up. And the guest was will.i.am. And will.i.am was like, they were the #1 video. And then after we were all like, congrats on your first hosting gig. We were so excited. And then Will turns around to his manager, Seth, and quickly pulled me into the conversation. He's like, wait, so I have the #1 video and I can be on MTV for 3 minutes, but if I host a show, I can be on for 30? He's like, how do I get my own show? And I was like, wait, what? That's a brilliant idea. Like you would, I mean, I think they're terrified to ask you that. Like, I think everyone's had that idea, but no one thinks you would ever do that because you see the value in being in front of the audience for 30. I made 2 quick phone calls. I take 0 credit other than being a steward of opportunity. I was a coordinator, so I knew to call my boss and how to set it up. But it was in listening that I realized that the timing was right. MTV had relationships with management and with labels because of the financial relationship to support music videos. And I was at MTV when cable started playing more music videos. And then suddenly there were more music videos being played outside of MTV than on. I mean, ESPN is playing music videos. And then MTV launched VH1 and MTV2, and then Fuse was launched, and Much Music and other platforms started popping up as cable expanded. It was YouTube, the culprit, that really, if you ask me, kind of took the magic away from the music video on MTV there. But it was that 30-minute window that we gave people that changed their life. And I say, when I watched MTV, I remember when it felt like the kids had the camera. It felt like the kids had the camera. We have the camera. We have access in the room, and we have the camera. In the 90s, I feel like it was a little bit like, let's give the camera to the celebrities and see what they can come up with. And they did their celebrity reality version. And then in 2007, which is the year that I left MTV, they took the camera from the celebrities and gave it to the audience. And that's where Laguna Beach and The Hills and Jersey Shore. And as that's happening, Facebook opens up to the public in 2007. Podcasts are added to our iPhone as a media property that we can have here. And suddenly I realized in 2007, damn, this media world just got big. And I was the guy in talent telling the stars of The Hill and Laguna Beach, I was like, don't go on MySpace or Facebook. If people have access to you, they're not going to watch the network anymore. I actually really believed that they were tuning in because they cared about what's going to happen next. And that's when I realized that they don't. They just like the process. They don't care what happens next. They love a process. They love a good emotional journey. And that's something that a lesson I've learned throughout my entire career that I've taken with me from MTV on.
Yeah, wow. I didn't even think about YouTube in all of this. It's really funny that
the Jackson thing, that's what it was. It was the Jackson Nipplegate that when that happened, YouTube came out with a stat that said this is the most YouTubed moment in YouTube history. And we were like, oh, so you're tracking that level of data. And this is going to be interesting. And then in 2009, there was a writer's strike here in America.
Yes.
So all the scripted projects stopped, which left a huge window of opportunity for me to connect with all of the stars that were no longer available for scripted projects to either become executive producers or stars of their own EP projects, or to create production companies that went on to create it. So there was a lot that kind of lined up, unfortunately, for the talent boom. But you needed celebrities, you needed those experts, you needed people. The format was proved, but it wasn't proven until, to be honest, I think Osbournes and then Mark Burnett and a couple of really smart producers looked at the American market. America, by the way, when you sell intellectual property, the network owns it, which is not how it works in most other countries. So you would sell Survivor to Sweden or Switzerland because you remain partial owner of that property, and then you turn around to America and you license the project. And that's the power in owning your content. And that's why I'm geeking out about what we're doing right now, to be really honest, because you own this, Roberto. Nick Cannon doesn't own Wild 'N Out. Ashton Kutcher doesn't own Punk'd. These, they can't relate to you on owning your content and getting it out and getting seen by millions and being able to make the impact that it can. They had to give something up back then. And I don't know about you, but I know, I am aware that this podcast industry is growing, but I can't name as many new podcasts as I can as many new platforms. that have arrived, especially on my Apple. By the way, every plus out there, every press that I'm aware of just got some type of press council. It seems like the space like quadrupled overnight. So I can name more platforms than podcasts. I am not. If that's the case, then I can't wait for Walgreens, for drugstores and supermarkets and Disney to even become podcast directories, that they shouldn't have to make podcasts, but they can just be an organizing principle around us, so that like-minded people, I can even see countries, I can see the state of New York, the city of New York, made in New York City, podcasts made in New York City. Imagine the ways people want to start searching and finding people. If you own your podcast, if you own your story and this content, or if you're doing what I'm doing, which is showing up and letting someone else own it, but I'm bringing my stories, like, and I'm intentional. Like, I'm talking about names and stuff like that. I want you to have this stuff. I want us to be successful together. And I believe that the space is growing, but it's not growing at a speed faster than we are. We are what's making it grow. It's our episodes, our shows. We are the alchemy of what is expanding. And I know that to be true because I was there when it did it in reality TV, in unscripted TV, and I feel like I got to be part of major shows that defined what happens next. And we have this opportunity now in podcasting.
It's huge because, like, I mean, you said there that, I mean, podcasts appear in 2007. I kind of vaguely remember, because when did the iPhone arrive? It was like 2006, really?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm really old. Because I've had every single one since the first one.
Or maybe 2007. Maybe it was 2007. I actually remember
maybe
my first iPod in 07. The iPods in 05 because it was on podcast. Yeah, it's on podcast because podcasts weren't added to the iPod until 2005. Until then, they were just something you would find on the internet.
Yeah, but people didn't really kind of know what they were. Right, there was no kind of big
YouTube was
over
kind of the preferred, right? It was like podcast or YouTube. Yeah. And I feel like
YouTube like podcast. What's a podcast? What's that? It's a bunch of people speaking, and I can download it through an app on my whatever. I don't understand it, and because even today, right? So people fall into one of two categories. Either they say to me, because it was like, can I see you on Thursday afternoon? No, because that, I'm recording an episode of my podcast. Oh my God, you have a podcast? Oh wow, that's so cool. And then they get their phone out and they're like, what is it called? Okay, I'm subscribing and I'm going to listen to it. Oh my God, that's amazing. And suddenly you're elevated in their eyes, in that tiny, tiny microscopic part of the universe. You're suddenly elevated to some level of celebrity status. I say I'm at level Z, but and sometimes I'll get people who'll come into my workroom because they're going to get measured up for clothes. And they book their appointment online and they come in and they see me greet them and they're like, oh my God, it's you. And I'm like, I mean, who else would it be?
They do exist.
I'm listening I was literally listening to your latest episode on the way in here on the subway, or tube we call it. And you're like, yeah, okay, so what? Right? I mean, my podcast it's not like I'm Joe Rogan or anything, right? Neither would I probably want to be.
Thankfully.
Yeah. You wouldn't be here. But then you get other people, Vinny, right? And he'd be like, oh yeah, I've got a podcast and nothing. Sorry, but what's a podcast? Oh, okay, well, and then I don't even know how to explain it. But they still don't know what it is. But that's the point is, 15 years later, it's still a kind of immature market or opportunity. Like, there is so much opportunity. I know the big explosion, it seems to be kind of happening in steps. So, during moments of crises. So in this country, podcast listening went up a level during around about 2016, when we were going through the whole kind of Brexit referendum thing about whether we were going to tear ourselves away from Europe or not. And that was quite a tough time for a lot of people. and the economy took a bit of a hit. People, there was unemployment and so on because of all the uncertainty. I remember certainly for me, that was when I started listening to podcasts because I was like, I might as well check this thing out. And then I suddenly found it was like I could curate my own radio station and actually have people keep me company while I was walking this new dog that I had that I, didn't have before and all this kind of stuff.
Puppy training, I know it well.
Exactly. And then the next explosion came during the pandemic when we had this explosion of new podcasts hitting our universe, right? Because people suddenly not working, they're sat at home, they got nothing to do. I was certainly in that situation. I was like, I've been on a guest on a couple of the shows. I like the format. I can't reach my customers right now during this thing that we're going through. Maybe if I start a podcast, I'll be able to just get into the ears of some of them and just keep them company for as long as this pandemic lasts. I never meant to continue podcasting afterwards. But then I also found, and I think a lot of podcasters find this, especially the ones that show up regularly, like every week, and they're constantly producing content. I get to meet people like you.
Yeah.
My world is elevated by the people that I meet, and with Zoom and everything else as well. There are no geographical restrictions, and people that are coming into shows like this one, they like hearing stories, but they also want to be inspired, and they also want to know that they're not alone, which is, kind of part of really the purpose of my show. Initially, when I set it up, it was to talk about tailoring and to do a little bit of tech talk, and then maybe to have one of my clients.
You stick to what you know. Yeah, you got to stick to what you know. I mean, the worst thing you could do is start a podcast and throw out the most interesting and unique facts and the things that you know most. I think you have to start there, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because what better place to grow from? It's not about, right? It's not about starting off correctly. It's like, hey, if I'm going to grow, I might as well grow from like a place where I actually believe in myself. Because when that space between what I am doing and what I could be doing, when that gets too large, too big, when that gap becomes gigantic, that's when, for me, that's when the insecurity, that's when the doubt, that's when the imposter syndrome sneaks in. And sometimes I have to either do two things. I either have to restrict myself. I have to say, Vinny, I know that I'm talented. I know I think I can play the piano, but now is not the time to play the piano. Just stick to vocals before you try to be the whole band. And that really helps me lower that space. And then sometimes I realize I have to step up a little bit. And I have to be like, Vinny, pick up a cowbell or a tambourine and get in there and like get some percussive going in there so you can satiate that need to want to play another instrument and find a way to close that gap between what you could be doing and what you are doing. That helps me. There are other ways that you could look at that some people would look at that as like a mindset way to help you get to the next level. I don't think about walking up the stairs. I'm in an upward stair journey. Forward is my action. I happen to be on the incline, but I set my goals and mile markers and social markers and like I spend 6 days a year recording my podcast. I spend 150 recording other people's podcasts. That's how much I get out of one-on-one time with people. Because I used to have to do it in the casting room one-on-one. I used to, I'd be in like Diane von Furstenberg's office interviewing her team for that show, or every single person at Vogue. And I've been invited in to these housewives. I'm literally in someone's home interviewing them and their children and their spouse and their sister-in-laws and the friends and the boutique owner, all those pieces. And I think of all of that to say, I loved surrounding myself with people who appreciate output. It's one thing to create. It's another thing to make sure you were hitting publish. And so I was attracted to musicians and TV stars and actors and radio personalities because they have an output. And I think the thing that's really neat about podcasters that separates us from influencers, and I think there are influencers that are podcasters and podcasters that are influencers, and we're all creators. So I want to put that out there. Right now, as a creator economy, there is money going to something called creator marketing platforms. These are like all-in-one platforms. It's like a website that a brand can hire to say, I don't know people with 1,000 followers who like podcast, but you have the algorithm and information. You find them for us, and then you hire them for us, and we'll pay you, and you handle them talking about our product, and you pay them, and you do the legality of it. And then this way we can get marketing, and we can work with creators and be impactful, and you can manage, the minutia of the relationship between creator and brand. I have over 50 of these platforms on my website on vpe.tv/hub that I've put up there, because these are things, this is a place that anyone at any point in their journey of listening to this conversation, or you don't even need to have, you need to have social media, because you need to connect your social media accounts to these platforms for them to see who you are. But this idea of putting my name on a list for opportunities, like that's what it takes. Like I make $500, $1,500, sometimes $3,000 a month, even more sometimes, rarely, by the way, because I'm kind of new to this content working with brands sort of space, because I thought that I was a podcaster. I thought all I could do is get paid for advertising and sponsor my podcast. I didn't realize that brands are spending money giving it to creators because they're allowed to, because the KPIs that Instagram and Facebook taught brands are social indexes of success. The KPIs, the key performance indicators of what you could be buying for, are out there. So call me a creator. It's my creative job to make sure that when I'm executing this campaign for you, I have a microphone, and I'm making sure you see me as a podcaster or as a social audio expert. Like I don't want to get confused for talking about a shaving cream, but what I would love to talk about is the fact that I can shave and podcast at the same time. It's one of those fun podcast skills that us podcasters get, it's like, and what better, and I got to get paid for it too, by the way. And I show people how to get your name on the list, get discovered. That's crazy to think. You got to put your name on a list to get discovered. I won my first Emmy last year, and I realized I'd never won an Emmy. 25 years of being in TV, I didn't win an Emmy.
I wanted to ask you about that, because I have you as, Vinnie Potestivo.
It's kind of like in the title,
Emmy
right?
Award winner. So tell me about that before we get onto the whole being discovered thing again.
It's all part of it, though. I realized that I was doing something to hold back my visibility, my discoverability. I realized that I didn't apply. I realized if I want to get paid by these creator marketing platforms, I need to apply, give them my name, cooperate, give them the data they need, and then let them find me. And when I literally realized that I'd never even been nominated for an Emmy, and I was like, well, how come I've never been nominated for an Emmy? Well, in my industry, in TV, up until about 4 or 5 years ago, there was no Emmy award for unscripted casting. There was for producers. So I was pushed to be a producer in my career at MTV because the producers of the Osbournes won awards. So I always wanted to be a producer because that would qualify me for awards and the accolades that came with my eye from bringing in the talent that ultimately the shows were, really based on. And I realized that there's national Emmys and local Emmys, and local Emmys are broken up here in the States into about like 19 territories. I became very aware that I needed to pick a media type. So I really honed in on documentary because of my unscripted background. Right. I put out some energy about like what kind of content would I want to be associated with. Like I'm usually someone that's an addition to the team. I'm either starting the idea or I'm being added to the team for talent or distribution purposes. And I found a friend of mine who was looking for distribution on a project. It was called Red Flags. And it shows the journey of a woman out of rehab, the 60 days out of rehab, where intervention is like we intervent and then you go to rehab, and then in the TV show, everything works out magically. I've been the child of parents who've come out of rehab. I know that the hard work happens, shortly thereafter. And what are the red flags that I can be looking at for me and for them? And I got to win my first Emmy with Kevin Harrington, who was like is the first shark in Shark Tank, by the way, the one that Mark Cuban took his seat. Kevin Harrington created the TV infomercial. So like that to me was gigantic. Distribution and television and talent development. That's what I see in that guy. Jeff Hoffman, who was the first CEO of Priceline and sort of Jeff Hoffman created the kiosks at airlines, when we go to print our tickets instead of having to wait in those. Like, these are really cool people who've done really instrumental things to make my life better. And I get to win an award because of my 25-year background. I got to win my award with those people, and it makes it so much sweeter, and it makes it so much more rewarding to get to have that experience with them, and to have that much meaning tied into a project. But I was laser focused. I knew what I wanted. I knew what needed to happen I knew how I wanted to win. I knew, because I know how I want to leverage that award. It wasn't about winning the award that made me victorious. It's about you getting to put it in the introduction. It's about, maybe that's what helps me get my next big speaking gig. I've got my first big speaking gig coming up in 2023 because of podcasting, at a convention called Podfest. So it'll be my first main stage moment where I get in front of thousands of people and really get to have ownership over my experience of who I am today. And that's to say I worked really hard again for that opportunity, and podcasting is neat.
It wasn't just this kind of lightning moment. This is you've worked for this over a very long career.
Yeah, they don't necessarily, the steps don't always stack on top of each other. So, sometimes you really have to work hard to connect them. And that being said, I could say this: 25 years, 27 years doing it later, time certainly helps you look back and put purpose and recontext, and maybe put different bookends to stories that, we created it for one way, but it had an impact in another. And that's sort of the non-linear part of media that's fascinating. That just this month, I have a show on Netflix now that's in like the top 10. And it's cool to see my name in a credit again on something that everyone's watching. But I also cast that project 20 years ago called Laguna Beach. And it's because of a podcast that made that show popular again, that got it back on Netflix. So people say, how do I get my show on Netflix? I'm like, cast something 20 years ago and then wait for humanity to figure out that what you did then was right, and let them come back and then imagine what they, and now the finding. Oh, I just love it. I love that story, because it's a very rewarding journey for me as a creator, and a reminder that there is a very nonlinear path to success in content. Maya Angelou says, the more creativity we spend, the more we have. Warren Buffett says, the more money we spend, the less we have. So why do we want financial and emotional, financial and creative, fiscal and creative, success at this? It's wonderful if it happens at the same time, but often you buy the ticket to the movie before you love the movie by the end of it, but you buy the ticket before. So that doesn't happen at the same time. We have this urge to want everything to, to click, convert with an emotional and a fiscal kind of value. And I gotta be honest, time is a bandit. So either work with it, or I don't know what to say. I don't know what the other option is.
Well, that question of time is kind of pretty relevant right now to a lot of brands, and whether it's a small entrepreneur or a podcaster, or an actor or an actress, or a corporation who are trying to get discovered and connect with the audience that they want to connect with. But then in this day and age, there are so many possible methods to do that. And people kind of seem to spend a lot of their time trying all of them, hoping that one of them is going to provide that lightning in a bottle moment and completely blow up, go viral, whatever you want to call it. How, when you start working with people, and I know that your clients vary in terms of what they do, who they are, whether they're a brand individual and so on, but how do you kind of start the process of trying to help them navigate where they really, really need to focus?
Yeah, where they can shine. It's really the place where they can convert the most, to be honest. It's the best place to start is often the place where you want things to end. So for me, I push a lot of energy to LinkedIn because I like the accountability, the social accountability of LinkedIn. I like the corporate accountability of LinkedIn. I like the tenor of conversations on LinkedIn. I like the intent when people log on to that network on LinkedIn. versus, maybe if I was a comedian and I was looking to try to make people, I was trying to grow my brand as a comedian, then I might turn to Instagram and give you an emotional, rewarding follow and experience, because that's going to give you more funny moments to share. And giving you funny moments to share, you think you become funnier. There's two things that actually happen. You think you become funnier by sharing funny things. And also your ego is fed. You are giving your ego this opportunity to say, I discovered something. I shared it. I gave value to whoever is watching this, needed to see it. And we
all become, Vinny in 1990, whatever. We become the guy standing in Times Square discovering talent, right?
We have ability to. And here's a funny part about this. Do you know when there's a moment where you're like, oh, not that actor again, oh, not that song again, not that movie, Mariah Carey again? Mariah Carey's fun in the beginning of the season when we all have our moment to share it. Mom, you have to, it's cute, between friends, and then it quickly becomes oversaturated. Her visibility becomes so much so that we think everybody has access to her. And then we stop sharing our experiences with her because we now have something to lose, versus before where we felt like you could gain something by getting an access or a touch point to this person. So the increase in visibility could actually really, really hurt you, in the sense that it makes people feel like if someone else already has access to you, and if I were to duplicate that energy, then I look redundant. I look not in touch. I wasted time. It wasn't as valuable. I start to resent that person. I start to resent their appearance, the song, the movie, and then it's the season, and then it's the year. And there's this dismissal, disgust piece to it that we build, our ego builds a relationship because it no longer serves us. I love a Mariah Carey song. I'd love to share it with people who haven't heard it yet, but I also have to find a way to make sure the people who have heard it find it as valuable as me. And there's a mindset piece there to discovery that with more visibility could come in marketing. It's sort of a diminishing marginal returns is a technical term for it, but there's this moment where visibility hurts the brand. And I realize it's not about visibility that leads to discoverability. You don't need more visibility. You need more shareability. It's in the aha moment of this podcast that you go and leave us a 5-star review. But then after you leave the 5-star review, take a snapshot of it and send it to me. And then we'll have a real conversation and we'll really keep talking. I'd love to, share with you in some energy, but it's in the share that matters. It's in the share of tone, of energy, of sound bites. I love creating guest podcast content because you may take this and turn it into sound bites, social media posts. I can go on and on and on about the places now where you can put content that you own, that happens to be recorded by way of podcast, but content you own, content that should live now on Pinterest TV. Because Pinterest TV just launched the end of 2022. And it is long form, evergreen, shoppable, tappable, immersible content. So if you've created something for stories on Insta or stories on YouTube, you have the perfect place to put some more of your vertical content. And especially if you have an offer to give on top of it. This podcast, we've talked about a couple of things. Imagine watching this and then being able to tap it. That's the future of where we're going, and owning your content is going to allow you to show up in those places. Also, just because I'm talking about owning content, I gotta say, quality matters too. So if you can afford a 4K camera, grab one. Also, Apple came out with a really cool opportunity, and I don't know, it's not an opportunity, but a really cool ability to connect our continuity. Is that what it's called? It's the coolest thing these are really great cameras, and they're more than enough of what I'm talking about for the future. It's not about looking great now. It's about looking great 2 or 4 years from now, when the expectation of content is 4K, because, by that time it's going to be 8K and then it's 16K. It's just, trust me, A lot of my highlights from my TV success are in 4:3 in ratio 4:3 with the bars on the side and standard definition, and you got waves coming,
Yeah,
up.
but that's the thing. It's moving so quickly because when you look at some of the, the biggest YouTube creators
Mhm.
today, you look at their early videos, you go right the way back through their feed to when they first started, maybe 5, 10 years ago, and they were just filming on like an iPhone 3G or something. I don't
Mhm.
even know if you could record video on those, but anyway. But like 1 megapixel cameras and that sort of actually not as bad as that. Like, recording on like an iPhone 5, for example,
Yeah.
right? 720p, it's fine. It was fine at the time. By today's
Yeah.
standards, not so great. But at that time, they basically, they kind of caught the wave because what you had to do was just do it, right?
Yeah. It
Don't
was all
worry
about
so much.
access, right?
Yeah, it was just access. Like, get it out there. It doesn't matter that, there's some wind noise that's muffling you a little bit, or the picture quality is not great, or your framing's not right, or you haven't done your hair right, or whatever. It was just get it out there.
Yeah.
And then you fast forward to those guys and girls today, and the production quality is incredible because they've built their business. They obviously have the income and the revenue to have whole production teams and people doing all that stuff for them. And the problem for people trying to enter the space now is they're comparing themselves to, a Marquez Brownlee today or a Sonny
Sure. Mr.
Lenarduzzi
Beast, and yeah.
today, and thinking, okay, well, I can't afford to produce any content like that, so I need to do it myself. I haven't got time to do it myself. I will do it one day. And then they put it off, put it off, put it off. And then what ends up happening is they don't, they create some content, but it never gets seen. It never gets shown
Yeah.
because they're so scared of all that kind of comparison sort of stuff. I'm speaking some of this from experience. Like, I'm not,
Yeah.
other than the fact that business wise, I don't have time to, people keep asking me, you need to do these YouTube videos where, you show people how to pack a suitcase, or you do that thing where you throw your keys up in the air and you're wearing a t-shirt. And then when you catch your keys, you're going out the front door and you're wearing a full suit. I'm just like,
Well, you know what I think about
I don't
that?
have time for
That
any of
feedback,
that.
I think that what you're doing is brilliant because you're leaving space for people to want more.
Yeah.
And in that imagination and that need, if you were to go and do those things, then they wouldn't ask you to do them anymore because you would have done them. They'll figure out something next to ask you because they figure out you're responsive. But the best thing that I think you're doing is giving them space to see, like stay in that imaginary space. Let them have those visions, and then maybe let that inform what some collaborations look like, in the future or so. Also, we don't start off songs, with the hook. Usually we got to let the song build. Like you don't, and I will, you don't start in the middle of the song. It starts.
Oh
Really.
my God, a great example of that is, so I'm going to come back to that, and then I
Yeah.
just need to go back 5 seconds. But the reason why other than time, is I see everybody else doing their version of the transformation videos or whatever, or we're getting dressed in the morning, this is how we
Mm-hmm.
do it. And I just don't like doing what everybody else is doing.
I
Podcasting.
relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So podcasting in my industry. So I was like, before I started, and I was like, just tailoring talk. By the way, I know that my listeners are listening to this right now, and they're thinking they want to tell you, Vinny, he never talks about tailoring on this podcast. He just has a different guest every week, and we listen to their life stories, and we learn a bunch of lessons, and it's very inspirational. He never talks about clothes. But I looked at other people in my industry that had podcasts, and what I saw very quickly, they did like 2, 3, 4, 5 episodes, weeks apart, then stopped completely. They
Mm-hmm.
gave up. They stopped showing up. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do it because nobody else is doing it. And also, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I show up every single week, and I'm going to keep producing content. Other than the fact I love doing it.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's it. So for me,
That's
it's all
powerful.
about, I don't like following the herd. I'm kind of like,
I know that very well. I didn't want to be compared to anyone, better or worse. I didn't want to give people the power to say, "Oh, Vinny does this. Oh, he's better version at this, or so and so does this better than you." I tried really hard to find unique ways. I know there are many ways to be successful, and if ultimately we're looking to get discovered, and I can help maintain discoverability, then like I'm going to find my own way to do it, because no one else has had my experience. No one else will get to say they created a talent development department at MTV and worked with blah, blah, blah. But a lot of people will be able to say, I don't know a single person in the industry. I didn't know how to get started. I didn't know who to turn to. And what I didn't do is turn to the people that were in the industry to help me. What I did is turn to the people who I wanted to help. I took out an ad when I was in college and I said, I'm looking to create my casting files. If you're looking for a future project, send me your information. What a weirdo. By the way, not even like a casting company. Student Box 577, One Campus Road, Wagner. Like I was like full on student mode. Like I was just
send me your info.
Yeah, like what did I know? I'm a tech guy. I know how to do like databases. So I got just under 700 submissions and turned that into a database. And then I started servicing. So I realized I'm in New York. I have access to this backstage thing, and I can tell them what I'm seeing, because they might miss it. And what I started doing is, because I worked at the computer center at school, I would scan in, I'd be getting paid to work at the computer center while I'm running my side hustle, scanning in castings and sending it to dancers and comedians. And then one day I saw an ad that said, come to MTV Times Square. Whitney Houston's going to be, singing a song. We're looking for people in the audience. And choir was canceled that day. It was a Thursday. Choir was canceled. And I thought, well, let's just go. I turned around to my suite and I was like, let's go to MTV. see Whitney Houston. Like, what a weird thing that's even like a real like sentence. And we went. And I got to meet the casting director and the team there. And they asked me if I would ask Whitney Houston a question. And my question was, what was it like recording with Mariah Carey on a Prince of Egypt soundtrack? So I practiced. And then Whitney comes out for the big moment. And I see the stage manager say, okay, this is the kid, Vinny from Staten Island. He's going to ask you this question. And I see Whitney say, I'm not answering that question. What? Good, different question. I was like, no.
You didn't have a plan B.
No, I was like, but I had so much fun practicing, and I could be more, and I got to do it with my friends. And I turned to the casting director. He was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, oh my gosh, I had a blast. If you ever need us to come back and do this again, or you need more people, let me know. And he's like, actually, tomorrow, they just told me 20 minutes ago, we're casting, I need a very Busta Christmas special, a Christmas special hosted by Busta Rhymes, who's going to read nursery rhymes and sort of in his Busta version. And I said, wait, I have a whole database of people. Yeah, I would love to send out. I can bring 30 people in tomorrow, no problem. And then that turned into, can you help us cast the Whitney Houston It's Not Right, But It's Okay video? And I was like, yes, but this is casting and I'm going to have to get paid at least $25 person that I give you. And that was literally the start of it all. And to be really honest, I only have this career because I started these tools and this doing something to help the people that I wanted to help. When I launched my podcast, I made a decision I was going to go back and interview Mandy Moore and the celebrities that I had worked with to make sense of what I had gone through. I realized I wasn't going to get to have hosts on my podcast. So I created ihaveapodcast.com, a place where I can profile you with your name. And I got it approved by Google News and Bing PubHub and Yahoo News. And it's aggregated and it's like a real news site just so I can add value to the guests that I'm making. And then I realized, I was like, wait, can I put my podcast out on that platform too? Because like, it's called I Have a Podcast, and my podcast is called I Have. Like, well, if it's good enough for everybody else, it's got to be good enough for me. Literally, it's unfortunate, but I need other people in my life. Otherwise, I wouldn't. Me having a 4K camera is a result of me sitting down with Jamie Lynn Sigler, and I was like, Jamie, how do you have such? I have the newest iMac. How do you have such a great camera? And she's like, oh, you have to get this little connector thing, you bippity boppity boop. And I was like, wait, I'm choosing to put me in standard definition. I wouldn't choose to put a guest. I would always want the best for a guest. And here I am giving myself less than what I would give someone else. By the way, the story of my life, coping mechanisms turned into superpowers. Glad I didn't have to get bit by a spider to get, to get to where I got in life, but it wasn't easy.
I love how you use a New York superhero reference there.
It was either Men in Black or Spider-Man when you were talking about your movie moments. I was wondering who was going to run out of the library with. I
wish it had been the set of Spider-Man's my favorite superhero growing up.
Yeah, sad news,
Yeah.
by the way, for Henry Cavill fans. I don't know
What?
if you saw what just came out from.
No.
We're getting a new
No.
Superman in the future,
No.
so yeah.
No.
Sorry, we'll have to
Does that
talk
mean
off.
he?
Well, I know, I
Could that
agree with
mean?
you on
Does
this.
that mean he might be James Bond? I heard that they would. I heard that
Ooh,
they'd done the gun barrel test with Aaron Taylor Johnson for Bond already.
I like the gun barrel test. I like that.
Yeah, yeah. Apparently they've shot that, and
Oh,
if they go with him, they're going to unveil him in March next year. I'd be up for that. I saw Bullet Train recently, and whilst that film is, take your brain out, leave it at the side,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's Brad Pitt, so and he's just effortless. I hope I look that good when I'm in my late 50s, but Aaron Taylor Johnson kind of rocks up in that as I don't know if you've seen it, but he's basically, Brad Pitt is an assassin. He's on a bullet train in Korea or
Oh,
wherever it
Bullet
is.
Train. Oh
Bullet
yeah,
train,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And Aaron Taylor
I haven't seen
Johnson
it yet.
is
That's
Aaron Taylor Johnson is basically the train is full of assassins, and Aaron Taylor kind of gets on with his partner in crime, rocking this beautiful British Navy pinstripe three-piece suit. And I thought to myself, I could see him as 007 one day. And a week later, I read all the rumors that he's screen testing at the
oh
moment.
yeah. All
He's such
right.
a chameleon. I think he'd do a really great job.
Well, how about on on our next episode, you talk about casting, I'll talk about tailoring.
Yeah.
By the way, I get the question a lot about like what should I wear? What should I wear on TV? What should I
Mm.
wear for this thing? What should I wear for a job interview, especially if it's on
Yeah.
camera? And my response is always wear how you want to be remembered. It's not even how you want them to feel or what you want them to interpret about you. For me, it's always just been like, how do you want to be remembered? Was this a dress up moment and you got
Hmm.
dressed up and you left them with a refined moment, or are we coming in cool and roll back and authentic and al dente and
Yeah, yeah.
transparent? Like so for me, that response has always been dress how you want to be remembered. That's the visual imprint that you have
Yeah.
control over.
See, I get that question more. So if my clients are going to do like a media appearance or something, they ask me
Hmm.
that question. So it's actually really interesting to get your take on that from a completely different perspective. Because when they ask me that question, I just go back to my own experience of being on television. I was on a game show once, like 20
Yeah.
years ago. I won, by the way.
Yes. I
And
lost. I was on the weakest link and lost. Just so
oh,
you know.
really?
I was
Yeah,
and she's so mean. She said, "Oh, Vinnie Potestivo, you are the talent scout who came and forgot to bring talent. You are the weakest link. Goodbye." That was my exit.
Mine was like you were with four other strangers and you basically got kind of split up at various and then you basically would get asked questions about yourself and they had to figure out if you were faking it or not.
Interesting.
And then at the very end, basically everybody kind of voted for the person they thought was the most honest or whatever, and then whoever was the winner got a check for like I think it was like $5,000. Um, and I won,
Nice.
and I did really terribly in the auditions, but for some reason the casting agents really liked me, so they just
That's
put
when you
me
do your
ahead
best.
anyway. Yeah, and
Don't
then they
I
told me, and then
totally agree.
so on the wardrobe question, and when I won, right, they handed me the
Hmm.
check, and then the casting agent came over and said, "We're really glad you won because the whole team, the whole production team, really liked you,
Oh,
and we were really rooting for you." And that was really, really nice because I'd been made redundant at the time, so I was kind of like
yeah,
looking for work. And anyway, whatever. So my answer to that question when people ask me what should I wear, I'm going on television or
yeah.
whatever, is informed from my experience of that because I remember that I had to take like several different colored shirts and other stuff, and then the wardrobe people would then look at it and be like, "You can't wear that because of the way the camera glare will be because there's checks in the fabric. Can't
Oh
wear
yeah,
that
it'll
color; it's too
buzz.
strong. The buzz, yeah,
Mm,
exactly." So I always answer that question weirdly from a technical point of view,
good. Yeah.
but I love your answer because it's really, really important, for them to dress the way that it, informs the impression that they want to leave people with.
Yeah, the camera is tricky for sure, but also if you're wearing a busy shirt, it's a busy shirt. If you've got a lot of patterns, you got a lot of patterns. It's the idea is to be mindful of. Yeah, by the way, the all blacks, all whites, shine. There are certain technical things to stay away from, but but also that's why I say like think about that. Like sometimes a sheer shirt is completely appropriate because you want people to see that you have a tank top or a line under here or something. There's times for that. So I like keeping it sexy. I like being like, just remember how you want to, dress the way you want to be remembered, because that's what dressing does. It's not even about the first impression, to be really honest. Generally speaking, if you're going on camera, the visual, the what you're wearing is probably not the first impression or the number one thing. It might be your voice, your eye contact, and maybe some of the physical or audio stuff that I can point out that will probably resonate louder than what you're wearing. You can wear, and then you can go on camera and then be like, what color was my scarf? And people would guess and be like, I didn't even have a scarf. But like, yeah. So, the details that we see. By the way, that being said, I lost a little bit of I'm 45. So this is my first year of glasses. Let's put it that way.
Oh, congratulations. I'm the same age as you. And I've been wearing glasses since I was like 6 years old.
This has been a blessing. I've had pretty strong vision. So, I see things the way I see them. And I expect other people to see them the way I see them, which has always been a detriment to me in my career, is not knowing what I don't know, but knowing that I need to push the boundaries. So even when I'm like creating podcast episodes now, I will look at my podcast, the artwork, and I will wear my glasses and see what they look like normal. And I will put my phone down on the desk and take 2 steps back and see what a percentage of this world might see, my podcast. And it's been really cool, to be honest, to be able to have the ability to to put myself in a situation where I now understand how other people can see things. It completely changes the way I deliver, a message if I'm alienating or not connecting with a certain audience of people because of the visual components of it. So I'm really mindful of all those pieces to it. It all matters. That's the stuff, to me, that's the stuff that impresses. Those are manners almost. And it's like, if I was a guest at your house, and I thank you for letting me be a guest on this podcast, but it's like my manners that I would hope you would remember were maybe a couple of cheesy taglines and my personality and stuff like that. But I would want you more than anything to be like, oh, I'd love to have Vinnie back. It's not because he's smart or knows what he's talking about or has worked with blah, blah, blah. It's just that I like the experience, and whatever happens in that experience, I'm open to. And maybe that's, again, a strange, weird, unique mindset. I don't know, but that's my mindset and it works for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, that in itself is really insightful as well, that, almost taking off your glasses and putting yourself in your audience's position. What do they see? And whatever it is, I mean, obviously it's something that in my day job, I have to think about constantly all the time, because there are so many touch points with what I provide to people. I had a WhatsApp message from someone that we sent his new suit out to because it was for a big event and he was going to be speaking on stage, and he's quite a big, powerfully built guy, and he's had tailors before. None of them have been able to fit him properly. But he sent me a WhatsApp message and he's like, bro, the suit's just arrived. When I took it out the bag, I looked at it really, really carefully, and I looked at all the fine details and so on. And you really knocked it out of the park. I've had suits made before, but this is just by far. And it wasn't, he's like, I don't know if it was an accident or if, and I'm thinking to myself, no, it's not an accident. I have to look at everything I create from the customer's point of view, because at some point they're going to receive it. And I try to deal with the podcast in the same way. So certainly when I first started, I don't know if you found this as well, but I was editing every single episode to within a millimeter of its life. Like if my guest was umming and ahhing all the time, or they had certain vocal tics, I would be constantly like, right, strip that out, strip that out, strip that out, strip that out. And it would take like 9-10 hours to edit half an hour's worth of audio. But I was just so, But you know,
That
as time
reminds
goes
me, I
on,
think we were like 3 or 4 days into shooting the Osbournes, and I'll never forget it. And then it was like the second week, and I remember seeing Sharon, and she's like, "We're recording," and I was like, "All right." She goes, "I was gonna do makeup, but fuck it, who cares anymore?" And I was like, "Wow, we're already at that stage where we're like." I love that. We're
yeah,
at it now. We've arrived.
exactly. So it's like fast forward now, like 18 months, and I mean, this is like episode 70, whatever. And you know, and it's actually Wade Galt, who's one of our fellow, you know,
Oh,
part of our
cool.
Podmatch
Yeah.
community. And Wade said to me, he said, dude, you're like over 70 episodes in. You're really good at this.
Yeah.
Just get it out. You don't have time to do all of that kind of stuff. Put your music in at the beginning, put
Yeah.
music in at the end, get the thing out there.
And you
Who
can
cares
always
about a
go
few ums and ahs?
you can always go back in, and you can always, how there's like a director's cut. There could always
Yeah,
be like the over tailored cut.
yeah, exactly.
Which is literally
So
just like me saying one word, by the way. Like it's cut down to just one word. Empowerment or impactful, whatever.
yeah, but you know, it comes from a place of wanting to give the very best
Yeah.
product to
or,
your
or
audience,
thinking
right?
thinking what's very best for your audience, let alone when they go, no, we want the ums and ahs. It
Hmm.
gives us time to breathe. We don't have that in TV. Everything in TV is like, give us air, give us time
Yeah,
to process what's happening and not have to sell us like in advertising, like in television, the way that how time is so valuable. I know your time is valuable. I'm not saying to take the long way, but we don't have to make those decisions for our audience anymore. I like that part. And by the way, if they want to speed us up, they can speed us up at
yeah,
1.5, 2.0. You can get me Alvin and the Chipmunk status level. Blast through this.
exactly. That's it.
But
And the other
I
great thing as well is
yeah,
feedback because, you know, back in the day, you know, when we were kids watching shows in the 80s and the 90s, right? If we had a problem with anything, we couldn't really complain to anyone. Yeah, we might try and write a letter to the
write a letter
network.
to the
We
network,
never,
right?
I mean, who did that? There were people
Oh,
that
I
did
did.
that.
I have my return letter. Dear Vincent, thank you for your interest. Thank you for your
What
interest
did
in
you
Mr.
what
Rogers
did you
Staten
write to
Island.
complain about?
I always had ideas. I always had
Oh,
ideas.
okay.
I
So
used
you
to.
were
There was
sending
this.
in suggestions.
Yeah, suggestions. Usually, I think you should. It would be interesting if you would take a squirrel, and I would always come up with like, "Thank you." I would get these messages, where "Thank you." While we appreciate the feedback and insight of our audience, we reserve creative decisions for our crew. There used to be these trading cards that we had called Garbage Pail Kids. Do you remember
Yes, I
those?
remember those. Yeah, we used to
There
trade
was
those
n-
at
there was
school.
never enough Vinnies, so I was like, I'm gonna take my matters into my own hands, and I wrote
Is that
in,
the one where because you had you had Cabbage Patch like dolls or
oh, Cabbage
whatever,
Patch dolls, yeah,
and then those trading cards came out. They were the Garbage
the
Pail Kids. So
Garbage
you
Pail
had like
version
ones
of it.
like Adam Bomb. So he was like the
Yeah,
atom bomb kind of
think of
version.
like Vinny Vomit, was
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the
yeah,
because
yeah,
they were kind of
yeah,
like gross, like
yeah, yeah.
garbagey kind of. But I wrote in letters so much, by the way, because they had. I remember getting the address. I loved mail. I loved
Mm.
letters in the mail. I loved that. I was that kid. Yes, I was. I would write. I learned in second grade or first grade. I learned that you can get the addresses off cereal boxes, and if you wrote in a nice thing about a cereal box, they usually would send you in a coupon. And then sometimes in my class, someone would get like a crate of tuna fish, and I'd be like, oh, do I like tuna fish? So I really started responding. I started writing. I had pen pals, and I was sending messages out to the universe well before I was aware that they would ever come back to me, by the way. So that's a good thing. I'm going to post my 7-year-old version of myself when I wrote my letter to Santa. I just got a copy of it that was posted in local paper, and I realized the sales copywriter that I was back then, that there's not a single question in my requests to Santa. I say things like, if you want to give me a magic set, that would make me happy. Sometimes my mom gets mad throughout the year, but I'm always trying to do my best. Like I say these like, right? I see the mind at
suggestive
work.
selling, just like, you know,
even I'm like, you know, and if in Santa, if you'd like, I know everyone probably offers you milk and cookies, but like maybe their reindeer want hay, let me know, and I can make sure you have, you know, like I would say things like that. And like I would try to like, what's your pain point, guy? What do you, what's the unique way that I can serve you? Even as a 6 and 7 year old, you know, that was built into me. But anyway, you can't take that part out. That curiosity, that wanting to serve people. I think we all have the ability to do it. And some of us have superpowers in other ways that we can certainly, you know, elevate that process. So it's been cool now in talent development to have so many people relate to what I do. Like so many people can say, I built a brand. I got a brand on media. I help people create content. I help that creative content convert into sales and convert into growth. So many people can say that they do that now. And so many people can say they do that successfully too. I have a 25-year background in a very specific way of doing it. And then also maybe about like say seven years in doing it in the digital space, the way that I love doing it now. And it's no better time to be a creator than like where technology and this, where we all are right now. It's a really cool time.
Yeah.
And thank you for this, by the way. Thank you for the space and like getting to geek out with me and talk about all of my favorite things, by the way. These are things that help people stand out, to get discovered. To be more visible, or visible when it matters, and shared when you can be. And it's being shared. It's not just seeing your favorite concert. It's wearing the t-shirt when you're grocery shopping and having that moment of community, you know? I think that, by the way, and just one last thing I want to say, if you come out with a podcast and it's a couple of episodes, there's no harm in that. Podcasts don't have to be every single month, every single day or week or even year. To be honest, I think in the future of podcasting, we'll see more the way that we have, you know, micro series on TV, 5 episodes.
Yeah, absolutely.
More finite, you know, episodes. It's about how you leverage it. What you get to do coming week to week, you're a source for me, not just for content, but for energy and decisions. Like knowing that you will be there every week for me empowers me to listen to you, because I know I could potentially make decisions against what you have to share, versus being a source and being an evergreen source for people where you're getting tremendous visibility. You don't need to be part of any additional conversation to reap the rewards of having offered out that information. But as long as you're leveraging it, you can't just put it out there and then leave it there. And you know, maybe it'll get discovered. Maybe the TikTok algorithm, whoever is out there that pushes things to go viral out of the middle of nowhere, you know, maybe it'll happen. Sure. But you have a lot more control over your destiny if you have ownership of your content and control over where you're visible. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Someone asked me, especially when I first started, they were like, you know, what it's like, what's it like? What kind of traction are you getting? And I'm like, oh, you know, I get like a handful of downloads a week, because when I first started, and I'll be like, but you know, promoting it, I guess the best analogy I can give you, it's like you have that friend who's an actor and they get their first break and they're in a play, and then they start rehearsing, and then they get the first show dates, and then they start telling all their friends, and they say to you, come to my show, come to my show, come to my show. That's pretty much what putting out a new podcast is like. So you kind of you kind of do your interviews, and then you do your editing, and then you hit the publish button, and it's out there. But then you got to tell people it's out there, and
yeah,
you know,
but
that's
it's
where
like,
you start.
But no one cares that you have a new show. No one cares that you have a new guest. No one cares that you even have a new song, by the way. But they do care if you can give them an experience while seeing a new song. They do care about the things that you're teaching, not necessarily the way that you're delivering it. So to my point there is like, yeah, we come out with new episodes, but as long as we're not saying new episode out on Tuesday, because no one cares, not even the people who are aware, who love your podcast, no one cares about new episode, but new opportunity to learn about this, new insights with so-and-so. This is the new piece that really matters. So just, I bring that up because I used to say new episode, and no one who liked my podcast cared. And
Vinny,
yes,
I lost you just as you said, no one who liked my podcast
Yeah,
cared.
no one who likes my podcast cared that I had a new episode, and no one who didn't understand what my podcast was about cared because they didn't understand what the podcast served for. So really landing on those gems, really being transactional, and not holding, not holding the best behind. We think, oh, we'll tease them to come. No, tell them exactly what they're going to get out of it, and then let them come get it.
But the great thing, and thank you so much for today. You're an open book, right? And you have given so much of yourself. I have had some interviews which were so hard because the person, they'd come on as a guest and it was to sell whatever it is that they do. And and it was like pulling teeth trying to get the conversation going because I'm just basically just trying to have a conversation and get to know you, and then through the process I can't wait to listen back to this, and this is definitely gonna be one of those episodes that I listen back to multiple times with a notepad and pen because you've given so many great teaching points. But that it's like some guests that I've had, especially early on, where they're trying to sell whatever they're trying to sell. I'm just trying to get a conversation out of them, human to human. But their eyes, you can tell in the eyes, right? They're distracted because they're just waiting for the opportunity to get their thing, but they don't want to give too much away. And that just never works, right?
Yeah.
I'd had to, some of those I've had to.
I just don't believe that we should be wasting our time selling products in podcasting right now, because there are other ways to leverage that content that can help you get the sale. I can put ads in this episode. I can ask you after we're done recording this if you'd like to add an ad in the beginning or the end. And I don't have anything to put an ad into, but I'm just thinking of the ways that other people might be able to create content that really matters, and then find ways to sell without having to make that content. Again, this comes back from that duality of needing my content to be emotionally and financially rewarding at the same time. And often, emotionally rewarding for who? Me? I'm emotionally rewarded when you get it. Yeah. You're emotionally rewarded when you receive it. These are
exactly
often different times. And it really helps me keep a healthy mindset to collaborating in this space.
Try and get across to people the concept of using the time and space when you're in a situation like we are in right now to give some value and just kind of let people get to know you. And if they like you, they'll want to find out more about you.
Yeah.
And maybe they'll want to work with you someday.
By the way, there's more to find out. That's just a fact.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is what brings me.
It doesn't maybe they want to know more about. There's a lot more to learn if you really care.
Yeah.
Like all of us.
Which, brings me to the next thing, which is we're going to have to book another date to get you back on because, we've got so much more to talk about, right?
By the way, for everyone listening to this, this is the goal. It is very difficult. One of the most difficult things you will do is doing something first. The only thing that is more difficult than doing something first is doing it again. Second is like the goal. Second is get the invite. Thank you very much, so much, Roberto, for asking me to come back. Get the invite, come back, show up as a guest, as in your most gracious way, to not be. By the way, if I would have focused on I don't. It's so funny to say this, but I'm not selling anything because I don't want the good times to end. There isn't to say there's more to come because I've held back. But I think that what we've talked about here in this, if I was listening to this, there's a lot of action that can come from this, a lot of steps that can happen. And I open up my inbox on LinkedIn. I ask people to reach out to me and connect with me prior to when you think you might need me to help you make a decision or a way to elevate what you're working on. How you might make it, and then I can help you take it to the next level, right? So there's ways that I open myself up to be, a steward to success and also support you along the way. That's why everything I talk about, I have every piece of tactics that we've shared in this interview on vpe.tv/hub. There's no gate, there's no information. I just need to make sure you're supported with this information that I'm sharing with you because I'm here to inspire. Like I want you to ask questions, but I want you to have those answers. And I don't want to be the person that holds you back in any way. I don't want to be that person, especially in TV. I didn't hold you back because you had to go through a certain gate in television to get access to the distribution. So I wasn't holding you back. I was I knew where to meet you. Here, you have so much control over when and where and how and with whom and why you get discovered. I really like empowering people, business owners, brand owners, podcasters, guests, or hosts to really, take ownership over the content they're creating.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you so much, Vinny. We're definitely going to be doing this again for sure. And you've already done the call to action, but I'm going to do it again. So people obviously can find you on LinkedIn. So I'll make sure I'll have your link in the show notes. And also check out vpe.tv/hub. Vinny has some other links as well with some great value content. So I'm going to put those there. And also check out the podcast. I have a podcast, which I think is a brilliant name for a podcast, by the way. And as a podcaster, I've already hit the subscribe button, and I'm looking forward to becoming a student of yours. Vinny, thank you so much. Have you had fun?
Oh my gosh, can you see my cheeks are hurting actually from smiling so much? I hope you can hear it in this podcast if you're not watching us where this video is available, if it is, but the cheeks are permanently red. I got Santa Claus cheeks on this one. It's a good one.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm like recording on Zoom because I've got the video recording as well as the audio. So I'm saving all of these up, and I will be doing something with them one day.
Bits and pieces.
Yes, exactly. Well, like you said, right? When you write a song, you don't necessarily get the hook straight away.
Yeah, you gotta like let them build, like you gotta let them take that journey with you. So they can celebrate, the highs when they are.
I've got to tell you, sorry, I should be doing my exit thing now, but I'm going to hold on to you for a second. Did you see the Beatles 3-part documentary thing that Peter Jackson strung together
I didn't.
I think it's on Amazon Prime.
Okay, I'll have to make note of that.
Oh no, maybe it's on Apple TV Plus. I don't know, but anyway, it was heavily promoted. You got to watch it. Like, he's cut together lots of archive footage, and it was from that period when the Beatles basically were about to, they were kind of coming to the end, and they basically had to produce an album and then tour with it, but they only had like just over a month. And this thing didn't exist. They had to write the songs. And so you've got these 4 guys who, the cracks are starting to appear. John Lennon's already kind of, his head's out of the game. He wants to go and do other stuff and so on. McCartney's trying to hold everything together. But there's one clip, and I'll see if I can email you the link, because obviously YouTube, is ever the way YouTube does, is cut this thing up. So you can watch.
But I have Disney Plus. I see it's on Disney Plus.
It's on Disney Plus.
So let me know where to look. Yeah.
So in the first episode, it's the part where McCartney, he's just so basically Lennon's gone AWOL, kind of walked off. They don't really have any songs down at this stage, and so Ringo's kind of just sitting around. George is sort of faffing around as well with cups of tea and things. And then McCartney's just kind of strumming away on the guitar. And, at first it's kind of just nonsense. And then all of a sudden you start to hear that famous kind of riff, right?
That's gotta be cool.
And then he starts to kind of hum sort of random stuff, because obviously there are no lyrics at this stage, and it turns into Get Back, which is one of my favorite Beatles songs of all time. But just to hear the evolution, like how that song just sprang up and came into being.
I love that.
It's incredible. And I watched that clip over and over and over again, because as creators, to me, it's joy, it's fascinating, and you know what? Like a few weeks ago, it was my wife's birthday. We went to a restaurant in central London, and guess who was seated at a table literally just like 5 meters, not even 5 meters, like 2-3 meters away from us?
Who?
Sir Paul McCartney.
Yeah. That's cool.
Just seen
Did
that.
You say anything? Did you say anything to him?
No, I think he was with his agent or something, and he obviously really looked like he didn't want to be bothered. There was a point where he got up to go to the bathroom, and I got up to go chase after him because I thought I'd get him as a captive audience in there. My wife is here; she's laughing. and my wife stopped me and she said, no, that's going to be a bit extreme, but you know.
It's hysterical. Wait, I too had a Sir Paul McCartney urinal moment.
Tell me.
By the way, he was hanging out with Priscilla.
Oh,
Presley. Yeah, at a place in New York. And I just remember seeing him go to the bathroom. I was like, wait, I need to go to the bathroom too. I don't know. It just seemed like the right opportunity. What a weird thing to share. But I was like, I wasn't in there yet. But I didn't look or anything. I wasn't being perverted or awkward. I was like, no, I just want to be just to be in the room with those people, you know?
I know.
The story sounds weird out of context.
Share the same airspace. Exactly.
That's exactly it. I love that. You know, maybe that's exactly it. And yeah. By the way, he was on the phone and he didn't wash his hands. So I was like, oh, I'm out of here. This is.
Yeah, I looked really carefully when he came out of the bathroom because I kind of hung around in the lobby of the hotel where we had dinner just to see. And he came out, and usually, even when you use the dryer, you still, you know what I mean? You come out and you kind of a little shake. There was none of that. So yeah. Anyway, there we go. He's one of the greatest songwriters of all time. So I'm not.
This is why we don't talk about celebrities we work with, because we will like dispel the myths and heartbeat with stories like that.
Wait, dude. Okay, so here's another one. Right, I can't let you go yet. I'm trying to end this episode because anyway. So Mandy Moore, one of your clients, I met her. So when I was 21, so she's probably a couple years younger than me. So it was when she just started, because her first album, she was like 16, 17 years old, right?
15,
I remember. Okay. And I remember one of the physical characteristics that interviewers always seem to mention in every interview in music magazines and stuff at the time was the fact that she was quite tall, but she also had very big feet, or has very big feet. She's like a size 8 or 9 or 10 or something.
10. Oh my God.
10. Right. So there you go. Yeah. So like I'm a US 12. But anyway, so I was in a Starbucks just off of Times Square, that same trip to New York, where I ended up on all these japes. And I'm looking at this, attractive girl, and I'm thinking to myself, she looks like Mandy Moore. And then I sort of looked down and I was like, okay, it's Mandy Moore. But I said that bit, I said out loud. And she just turned around and looked at me as she had her coffee in her hand, and she said, yep, I am. And then she walked out, and I was like, anyway, there we go.
That's hysterical. It's when the inside voice meets the outside voice. That's cool. That's cool to think maybe you saw her in New York?
Yeah.
So maybe I was there. She was here.
It was a good.
I've been in those MTV era, and that would have been. There's like this Big Brother Vinny that comes out. When the 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old Mandy is working at MTV. I'm the guy walking around with beach towels covering up, like trying to create some space in this like fishbowl of a studio we were in Times Square. But we talk about that, Mandy and I. We talk about that in a couple of episodes of my podcast about the experiences we went through at spring break, New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve is coming up. It's wonderful to be in Times Square. If you have a talent pass to go to the bar.
It's on my bucket list of things to do, which is to be in New York at Christmas time through New Year.
Christmas time is fabulous. Yeah, sign me up for that. But like, there's no there's adult diaper sponsors for the New Year's Eve show in Times Square. So I don't know. For me, I'll wait till I qualify to be in that audience due to like whatever reasons, and then that will be my time yet again. But I was there. I was there for Y2K. I was there for the year 2000, and I feel like I was there. I took the risk. The lights didn't turn off. The party kept going.
Yeah.
Good times. But thank you again for this.
Oh, no, you're so welcome. And thank you all so much for joining Vinny and I on this episode. Don't forget, Tailoring Talk is on Instagram at Tailoring Talk Podcast. And I love feedback, so please email me at tailoringtalkpodcast@gmail.com. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review. You can also click the share button on your player to send this episode on to people you know. It might help or inspire. And if you're enjoying Tailoring Talk and want to help and support the show, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Roberto Rivilla. Have a great week. Be good to each other, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks, Vinny.
Thank you.
Bye.
See y'all next
Thank
time.
you.